There's one Dryfire accessory that everyone should own if you actually practice. And if you don't, there's probably no excuse for it and you should get on getting one or some today. I'll talk through what it is first and then explain how to make it. What I have are carbine and pistol magazines that get loaded with dummy rounds that don't have powder or primer, so they're non-functioning, but they simulate the weight of what real ammunition is going to be in the magazines, and I use these for dry fire training. The reason is, if you've practiced doing mag changes for any amount of time, well, let's talk about carbine. This is a good one. If you practice mag changes, bolt forward carbine magazine changes, doing it with a full 30 round magazine is way different than an unloaded magazine. The unloaded magazine, you just barely slide it in the gun, it's going to click in place. If the magazine has 30 rounds in it, it's going to take pressure applied in a specific way to make it click. Otherwise, if you just throw it in the gun and you move the gun at all, it's just going to fall back out. In the perspective of pistol training, drawing the magazine off your pouch and bringing it up to the gun, there's a way different amount of physicality involved, or just the timing and the movement and the hand-eye coordination of bringing this to the magazine well on your gun if it's got ammo in it, compared to being completely empty. A completely empty magazine you could almost just throw because it doesn't weigh anything, and if you're used to using weighted magazine, it's a big difference. So, how do I make these? I reload 5.56 and 9mm, so I'm able to create these myself. If not, I know there's some places online that sells them. I should have looked them up, but I think Billy Barden, Spec Train, maybe Spec Train NC, the worst for not researching this. He's easy enough to find. Pretty sure Billy sells these, but if not, if you have a friend that just locally reloads ammo, all you need is enough to load a couple magazines full. Again, all this is just a reloading projectile, an empty case, and in the back, there's no primer, there's no powder. So if I would accidentally get one of these in the chamber of my gun, or on purpose, and pull the trigger, nothing bad's going to happen. Couple words of caution. You want to keep these separate from magazines that do have ammunition in them, especially if you're doing manipulations, anything like that. So, me and my, being very artistic, I use different colored base pads, so I really like these heading pads. Blue and silver are two colors that never go with me on the range. I've got black and gray, like a gunmetal gray, that I use mainly for training mags. So, I can just look at these, see the color of the base pads, and know these are my training mags. And maybe down the road I'll get a set of blue ones to the range or whatever. Maybe he'll send me some, whatever. But for right now, if I look at those, just the color of the base pad, I know it's training mags. If it's a carbine magazine, if it's tan, it's a training magazine. It's not going to have live ammo because I don't take tan carbine magazines to the range. That may change, but as of today, I don't own a single one that goes to the range. So any tan magazine I see is going to be loaded with dummy rounds, and you could still obviously not interchange the rounds in it. I could just look at the top of the magazine before I start training, verify it's one of the training ones, but I'll stop. But it's important to put safety measures in place, obviously, so you don't get hurt. But there's just so much benefit to it. It doesn't cost very much money, and if you're serious about dry fire training, it's important to do. So this also changes the weight of the gun. So just swinging the gun around, doing target transitions, or doing a drawing the gun completely unloaded is way different from drawing the gun. You don't have to have it plussed up, but with a magazine filled to capacity, it's going to be a different feel. Also doing mag changes, like I said, the weight of bringing the magazine to the gun, but also the force required to actually push the magazine in and make it seat. Here we go. So these don't actually seat very hard, but actually making sure push them hard enough to actually click in the gun, as opposed to doing one of those kind of things where it's not actually seated in the gun. So what I do as far as determining which magazines are going to be used for my dry fire mags, if you're already training and you have a couple magazines that are scratched up, ding, dented, aren't reliable, cheaper, an off-brand, for example, I think they're okay, but if you had some Magpul Glock magazines that you don't like or they're wore out, you could use a couple of those and keep the actual Glock brand for training, something like that. If you want to keep them separate, You could do it that route, or like I said, just something worn out, it's been stepped on, broken, cracked, whatever. You could tell from the look of these magazines have seen a lot of wear just because of how shiny they are from just being, inserted in the gun a bunch, dropped to the ground a bunch, all that kind of stuff. So these get to the point where I'm sure they would still function, but I would never use these for actual live ammo. They're just Dryfire only magazines. And so you could use worn out springs, followers, all that kind of stuff, just as long as they hold the ammunition. And so anyway, anytime you do Dryfire training, you should use weighted magazines. There are companies that be like the blue gun, but they're weighted, and it already has the contour of the magazine for that platform that they actually snap in the gun or click in the gun. Those are okay. For carbine, it would probably be fine. For pistol, I don't love it as much, if you have the option, just because the base pads feel a little bit different way that the base pad hits the palm of my hand, the contour of it, the gripping surface, whatever. I would just prefer to use the actual stuff that I'm going to use in competition, training, real life, whatever. So I just prefer to train with the actual base pads that I would be using, just so it feels as close to the real thing as it could be, because when you're doing dry fire training, the whole point of it is to make it be as close as you can to when you're firing live ammo and doing real training. So hopefully that's helpful, or if you don't have those bad boys, you should get on that immediately.